See here. All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Sales Vitamin Podcast, where every episode is a sales vitamin for your professional sales development. And we've got a super guest today, Lisa McLeod. She is the author of Selling with Noble Purpose: How to Drive Revenue and Do Work That Makes You Proud. But she's also got 4 other books. She's a best-selling author. She's an advisor, consultant, and speaker who works with senior executives and sales teams all around the world. And we've got her today on the Sales Vitamin Podcast. Lisa, it is great to have you on the show today.
It's great to be with you, John.
I'm excited. Well, you've got the book, and that's coming out, Selling with Noble Purpose. What do you mean, and high level, what is noble purpose? Because that's a buzzword that we could throw out if we wanted to. I'm sure a lot of companies can write that on their mission statement, but what was your inspiration? I know you have another book, Leading with Noble Purpose, but what's behind that, this noble purpose piece of it?
So your noble purpose is quite simply, how do you make a difference to your customers? And it all started about 10 years ago when I was part of a research project to identify what differentiated the top salespeople in an organization. And what we found was the salespeople who truly wanted to make a difference to their customers outsold the salespeople focused on their own targets and quotas. And the data has held true over the course of 10 years. The challenge is the cadence of daily sales pulls you towards the number, and it pulls you away from what we call customer impact.
Yeah. So what has been the connection there between the purpose and the profit? What's been the connection there?
So the purpose actually drives the profit. So the data tells us now that companies with a purpose bigger than money, and it's more than just, we want to be a good citizen, we want to be nice people, let's kick some money to charity. But the people who truly have a purpose, a North Star bigger than money, like, we're going to change our industry, we're going to help small businesses be more successful, whatever your purpose is about how you're going to make a difference in the world, when you lift that up, those companies outperform the market by over 350%.
Wow.
And the reason why is when you have a purpose bigger than money, it changes the sales behavior. Customers can feel it. So instead of the sales manager sitting in the seller's ear going, close the deal, close the deal, close the deal, which promotes all this frantic, grabby, graspy behavior that has sadly stigmatized our industry.
Right.
So instead of that, you have the manager saying, our noble purpose is to improve life for these customers, and go out and do it in the biggest, boldest way you can with as many people as you can. It's a very different ethos.
What's kind of a misconception that's out there about this noble purpose, or like you said, the fluffiness of, because I think from the people you've talked to and all of these places that you speak, you probably get a group that says, that this is not, selling is, quite frankly, some people don't think it's a noble thing, but obviously, but where is that misconception?
And it's right with what you said, that sales is not noble. And the misconception is, if I become a noble purpose seller, my margins will suffer, because that means I'll give the customer everything they ask for, I'll lower the margins. The opposite is true. Our research demonstrated that when you are in the headspace and the heart space of making a difference to customers, you create a differentiated experience, and actually you sell higher margin deals because you are differentiated. Your deals don't go out to bid. The other thing is that another misconception is that there's this gauzy, touchy-feely thing. You can't kind of put your finger on it.
Yeah.
And what I often say to that is, if you want passionate customers, you're going to have passionate salespeople, and they needed to be excited about something besides just making money.
Yeah.
And this making money and making a difference are not silos. They are directly connected, and all the research tells us that.
How important is culture to what you're trying to do? Because, and how you explain it in the book, because from where I'm sitting, and I know from where other people, that culture and getting the buy-in, this is kind of something that's probably hard to train, like a skill, but you've got to be able to get that buy-in. Is that right? On the culture side of it, how big is that part of your training?
That's a huge part. And you can actually train people. In the new version of Selling with Noble Purpose that just came out, we added a chapter, the
Wow.
manager as the belief builder. It's a whole section actually of the book. And what you're trying to do, and I want to be crystal clear on this, you want a competitive, driven, urgent culture. You want that.
Right.
Where you want it pointed is to have the biggest impact on clients. Because when it's competitive against each other, you don't help each other. When it's competitive just for your own money, you become a very transactional organization, and clients don't want to deal with that.
Right.
So right now, we have two things that are happening that are crucial. We have a growing chorus of employees saying, who am I and why am I here? You know, when COVID hit, everyone was like, we're going to make this work, let's go home. And now the fatigue sets in, and people are having kind of an existential crisis because they were home, they weren't going to the office. And it's like, if you've ever experienced the death of a parent or something big like that, you kind of do this self-reflection around, why am I here? Why does my life matter? So employees are having that. The second thing that's happening is we have a growing chorus of customers saying, are you here to help me or are you just trying to close me?
Yeah.
So when you have those two things, the training that you need to give your employees in their culture is to start describing how you make a difference to customers. Not just we're the best, but here's the actual impact we have on customers, and lift that up. And one of the best ways to do it is storytelling.
Yeah. What are some of the mistakes you see, or maybe mistakes isn't a good word, but some of the things that you see when you go speak with these companies or now virtually talk with these companies and work with them? What are some of the key things that you say, well, here's where I know I'm going to have to focus on this right now, because typically 95% of the organizations I work with struggle with this as
Yeah.
pertaining to this noble purpose?
So I'll tell you three things. One is you have to have clarity of purpose, and you have to have it declared. And it's taking what is implicit in your business and making it explicit. So I gave the example, one of our clients is in IT services. Their purpose is we help make small businesses more successful. Like, it's not sexy, it's not catchy, it's not any of that,
Yeah.
but it works because then everything they do is around helping small businesses be more successful.
Right.
So, and what happens as leaders is you often think, well, everyone knows we do that. But if you look at the daily cadence of business, if 90% of your conversations are about money and how we're going to make more money and all of that, your people don't know that deep in their heart. They don't know your purpose. So number one, get clear on your purpose. Number two, there is a question that you can ask when you are looking at sales opportunities. So anyone who's in sales themselves, anyone who's a sales leader can do this like right now. And we call it the game-changing question. Whenever you're looking at a sales opportunity or a big market opportunity, after you assess what's the market, who's the customer, what's the deal size, all the stuff we do, you ask this one question, it changes everything. And the question is this: how will the customer be different as a result of doing business with us?
Hmm.
We call it the game-changing question, because if I'm your sales manager, John, and I ask you that question when you're like, oh, Lisa, I'm so excited, I got this deal, da, da, da,
Yeah.
da. And we talk about the money and when we're going to close it and who the competition is, and we talk about all that. And I say, okay, before you go out to meet with a customer, how will this customer be different as a result of doing business with us? What the leaders that we work with find is when you ask that question of your sellers, it points them in the right direction. If they know the answer, it sets them up to have a more compelling conversation with the customer. And if they don't know the answer, you know they're not ready to go close the deal because
Yeah.
they can articulate it.
Yeah.
So those two things, get your purpose, ask the question, and then the third thing is customer impact stories. You want to seed your culture. You can tell what a culture it is about by the stories they tell. So you want to start telling stories, not just the win story of who closed the big deal,
Yeah.
but you want to start telling stories about how you made a difference to customers.
Is there a different approach to the noble purpose from a sales manager and an individual performer? And if there is, kind of talk about that just a little bit. What's your approach when you're working with organizations from a working with a group of sales managers versus maybe the individual performers?
So here's what we find in organizations. And the first study we did on this, I didn't know I was doing a study to uncover noble purpose. I was trying to uncover what differentiated the top performers. And through some in-depth personal interviews, I was able to identify they all alluded to this sense of higher purpose. Because when you first start talking to them, they talk about their numbers and all that, but then you'd
Yeah.
say, well, why? And they alluded to this sense of noble purpose. And that's how we came to name it. And so when you look across an organization, if you are a successful organization, I would lay you a bet you already have people in your organization doing this, and they're at the top of the organization. So when you look across it, this is not a radical shift.
Right.
What this is doing is it's taking those people, and they may say, I'm the number one sales rep, I'm ambassador club, I'm president's club. But when you say, tell me about a time you made a difference to a customer, their face will light up. That's the seeds of how we start, is we find the people who already have this. And what we found is noble purpose is innate to top performers, even if they're in a transactional organization where all the people talk about is short term, short term, short term.
Yeah.
They'll hold on to that purpose and they'll be top performers. But what we found, back to your question, in the middle of the bell curve, those people are highly dependent on the narrative they're being fed from leaders. And that's where the leadership comes in. So one of the clients we worked with was a software company out of Charleston, South Carolina, Blackbaud. And one of the things that they're working with their CEO that he challenged his team on was, let's look at our meetings, and we want to look at our leadership airtime. And we want to have at least 50% of the time we're talking about how we make a difference to customers. And there's a Wordle in the book, Selling a Noble Purpose, where we show the sort of before and after, where before they spent all their time talking about their own products and their own numbers and all that. And afterwards, they started talking about customers. And he said, we're going to aim for 50%. And when they shifted that, their sales numbers went up. They drove more innovation because now everyone's thinking about customers.
Yeah.
And not just generically, but very specifically, how do we make a difference to them? So the leaders are crucial. And when you can flip the sales leadership narrative and you give especially frontline managers some concrete tools to do that, the sales team follows.
Yeah. Now you sold and you were a sales leader in a large firm in your previous life before what you're doing now. What's changed? What have you seen change from a sales standpoint over the years from when you started to now from a sales standpoint?
Well, there's three things that have changed. They're crucial. Number one, and everybody knows it, the buyer's journey is, even in a B2B space, 70, 80% online.
Yeah.
So the need for the seller to have information about the products and all that, they still need to know it, but that's not a differentiator anymore.
Right.
Because the buyer already knows all that. It's all online. They're looking at your reviews. They're looking at all that. So that's a big thing that has changed. And while it was already happening pre-COVID, COVID was the definite end
Yeah.
of that feature tell thing.
Yeah.
The second thing that has changed, and it relates to the online piece, is there's a level of transparency. And customers are talking to each other, and it's forced transparency. Reputations are being won or lost based on perceived intent. So if your sellers are really transactional and they have a reputation, as some sales teams do, of being those, close it, close it, close it at all costs, your reputation is going to precede you. And now customers are not even going to see you because it's a decision of whether I click yes on the Zoom meeting or not. They're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So the second big change is perceived intent, the thing that sits under your products. Customers are reading that. And the third change is employees expect more.
Yeah.
Like the whole notion of, you just come to work for me and you do what I say and you hit your number and I'll give you a bunch of money. They want that and more. Now people want, especially younger people, they want meaning. They want purpose in their work. I just got an email from a sales leader I know today who said, now that I've been home, I've really had the chance to think about who I am and what I want to do next. and I think I want to make a move. And that's one thing that employers should be really proactive about preventing, because most people aren't going to quit during a pandemic. What they are going to do is they're going to quit and stay. They're going to quit caring, but they're going to stay on your payroll.
Right.
And you're not going to know for 6 months.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're sitting somewhere.
Right there. I remember one sales leader told me one time, he said, I think half our sales force quit last year, but they forgot to tell us.
Yeah.
And I just think these 3 big things: the customer's journey is online, intent matters. They're reading your intent across your brand and with your salespeople. And then the third change is people want meaningful work, and they
Yeah.
will leave you without it. And those are huge changes.
What would you tell the person coming out of college right now, or someone that's in a non-sales professional role that's maybe considering transitioning into sales? What kind of advice would you give them, or what would you say, here's what you need to be prepared for?
So I'll tell you what happened to me when I was coming out of college. So I was a college senior. Everybody asked a college senior, so do you have a job? Do you have a job? Do you have a
Yeah.
job? And I was at this party with my then boyfriend, who became my husband, and his bosses, he's a couple of years older than me, so he already had a real job.
Yeah.
His boss's wife asked me, do you have a job? And for the first time, I had just gotten an offer that I was taking the day before. I was so excited.
Yeah. I got a job.
I do have a job. I'm so excited. I said,
Yeah.
I'm going into sales with Procter Gamble. And she goes, oh my, you're going into sales? I could never do that. And with this
Yeah.
like look on her face. Well, I was so naive, I misread the look. I thought she meant like, oh, you're going to be a brain surgeon? I could never do that. Or a firefighter. I thought it was a compliment. I had no idea that what she meant was, oh, that's disgusting. I could never do that.
Yeah.
So, to my advice for someone that's going into sales, it would be twofold. If you care about making a difference to people, and you are a person who loves helping people, getting to know them, more than just helping them, but improving them, making them more successful, find a company that is doing that, and you're made for sales. Because if you have this impression that you're going to have to be, quote, all salesy
Yeah.
and weird about it, the data tells us that is the opposite of what you need to do. That if you have, and it's really clear, it's more than just helping people, it's improving people, because that's what selling with noble purpose is about. Not just pleasing the customer, but improving the customer. If you were that kind of person who walked in to a situation and said, you know what, this could be better, I can help this, then sales is probably for you. And it
Yeah.
is where the money and the meaning come together. And don't feel bad about wanting to make good money. That's not in conflict with wanting to make a difference. And so
Yeah.
that would be my counsel to someone. If you are a person who can go in and get people excited about something, and you can look at a situation and say, here's how I can improve this, the sky's the limit in sales.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's a lot of sales vitamins right there in itself. How about measuring? Okay, we talk about an ROI, and sales is such, whether you like it or not, there's numbers behind it. How many calls do you make? The sales results, but selling with a noble purpose. What are some things? How do you measure that? And do you talk about that a lot? And what you're saying? How do you measure that as a company or as an individual? And so that you show that, hey, this is really working. Because I know there's a lot of data behind what you do, and I believe in it. But tell the listeners, hey, here's how it's measured.
So the first thing we have to look at is leading versus lagging indicators. And your P&L is a lagging indicator. It's
Right.
telling you what happened last year.
Right.
Your deal size is a lagging indicator, a little less lagging. Your call reports are a lagging indicator. So those are all quantitative metrics, and
Yeah.
quantitative metrics are always lagging. What you want to do as a leader is look at the qualitative leading indicators. And so I'll give you a couple of them that you can measure. One is look at the leadership airtime, just like they did at Blackbaud. Are you spending at least half your leadership airtime talking about Not just, hey, we have a purpose, but like specifically how we make a difference to customers. Because the words of the leaders fuel the belief of the team, which drives their action. The other thing you can look at, and we did this for a company called Hootsuite out of Vancouver. They were
Yeah.
a startup, and they've now become a unicorn and all of that. But I
Oh,
worked
yeah.
with early days. And one of the things that we measured was we taught every single one of their salespeople how to tell a customer impact story. And the guy who was the chief revenue officer, Steve Johnson, just posted a LinkedIn thing on this. We taught every single one of the people how to tell a customer impact story, which is a true story about how you make a difference to customers. Not like, here's all the feature function, but like
Yeah.
the true impact on the customer.
Yeah.
Like the state of New Jersey and Hurricane Sandy that actually saved people as a result of Hootsuite. Like, no joke.
Yeah.
So they told these stories, and what we measured, we trained them, then they practiced, we scored them, and then we had a story off, and we had a competition, a company-wide competition. And in that year, after they had that story off, it was actually within 6 months, they doubled revenue.
Wow.
That was a leading indicator that you could measure. And one example I often give when people say, well, how do you know it when you see it? If you've ever watched figure skating in the Olympics, I'm not a figure skater, so I've only watched it on the Olympics. So I've watched it like, what, 10 times
Yeah.
in my whole life.
Yeah.
But in figure skating, they have two scores: technical merit and artistic impression. Technical merit is, did you do all the jumps, all the turns? Check, check, check. Artistic impression is, how emotionally engaged were you in your performance? How did you engage the audience? What did it feel like? And here's what I've observed. Nobody wins on technical merit. You can lose on it, but they win on artistic impression. What I started to realize was, even though I don't know anything about figure skating, I can usually pick the winners just by watching. And so can you. And so as you think about this from a leadership and management standpoint, you got to have the technical merit. Like, people have to be making the number of calls. Their proposals have to include the facts.
Yeah.
All of those things of the technical merit. You will not win anything if you don't have that. But the artistic impression is the noble purpose, and it shows up in 100 different ways. But you can train people to it, and
Yeah.
just like ice skating, you can score it, and it's what wins. It's that one thing. It's like a force multiplier that takes everything else. It adds this level of emotion and passion and skill, and it lifts it up a notch.
Yeah. What's your thought on testing? Testing sales, because the selling with a noble purpose, you can test for different, whether it's Myers-Briggs or the DISC test and stuff like that. Is that something you're a proponent of when it comes to just the overall sales process and kind of getting that fit for the role?
You want to suss it out in the interview.
Yeah.
And so in Selling with Noble Purpose, there's a whole section on how to look for it in interviews and how to ask the right questions. And one of our clients, I think I mentioned earlier, Blackbaud,
Yeah.
the guy, the chief revenue officer at the time, Patrick Hodges, great guy. We worked with him and developed a template for interviews. And they actually expect people to go on our website, read our story, and come to the interview and tell us why this would matter to you. So if you can't, and their whole story about how they make a difference to their clients. So
Yeah.
if you do that, the interview's kind of over. The other thing is, if you don't have that all done for you, all you need to ask someone, if they've got any sales or customer experience, is tell me about a time when you made a difference to a customer. And they might tell you about the big deal and all that because they're socialized to do that.
Yeah.
But then push a little further and say, why did that matter to the customer?
Yeah.
And watch and see if they know, and watch their face. And that'll tell you if they're hardwired for it. Give them a couple tries, because they're going to be socialized to tell you how big the revenue was, how they did it better than anyone else, and all the things they did. But say, besides what you did, what I'm most interested in is, why did this matter to the customer and how did it help them? And watch what story they tell you there. That's the tip of the hand.
Yeah. How how important is the technical side of sales getting? I know that's been a change over since when you started, and even when I started. Use of Zoom and even social media. Do you get into any of that? And what are your thoughts on that part of the sales process?
So I am not a technical expert,
Yeah.
but the piece that we do get into is what are you communicating
Right.
on that? What is your intent? What are you communicating? And one of the things that one of my clients, the head of HR for a big bank, said, who gets a lot of sales calls because a lot of
Yeah.
people call on her. She said, what I've realized now that I'm seeing salespeople again is what was a little annoying in person is intolerable in Zoom. Horrible. She said that salesperson that only talks about themselves, she said, at least in the office, you could like welcome them in, have a cup of coffee. You could kind of give some verbal clues and say, let's go ahead. But
Yeah.
on Zoom, it's horrible. So one of the things that we've been coaching a lot of the teams that we work with on is how do you engage with the prospective customer, especially a prospective customer on Zoom.
Yeah.
And it involves doing more homework than you used to do before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't think of that, but yeah, it would if someone's kind of annoying when you see them in person. It would be even more
It's
on a
horrible,
Zoom call.
horrible. The Zoom call. And so I think one of the things that we're seeing, especially in B2B sales, when everyone first went home, nobody was taking calls from salespeople.
Yeah.
And so what it did though, was it leveled the playing field.
Yeah.
And now they may or may not take a sales call from you, but your ability to stop by or take them to dinner or like all of that is gone. It is
Right.
going to be solely based on, are you here to help me? And do
Yeah.
I think there's a reasonable chance that you could?
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. All right, I've
Yeah.
got one more question for you, but before we finish with this last question, tell all the listeners where they can get a hold of you, where they can go to get the book, Selling with Noble Purpose, and all 4 of your other books, because I'm telling you, listeners, you need to get out there, get to Amazon, run to your computer or wherever this book is sold and buy it. So tell them where they can get a hold of you.
So go to sellingwithnoblepurpose.com.
Okay.
And we have, in fact, we have something free. We have an assessment that you can do to assess yourself and your team's level of differentiation and engagement. It's super short. You do it, you answer like 10 questions, and then it'll tell you what to do if you scored low. And
Okay.
that's where you can also find the book. The book is on Amazon, and the audio book I read myself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And so you can get that. The other thing that you can
Cool.
do is follow me on LinkedIn
Yep.
because we post a ton of free content on LinkedIn. We do a Work on Purpose newsletter. We post free
Okay.
videos every single week. So folks can follow us there.
Okay, awesome. So all you listeners, make sure you get to the website, get the book. It's powerful stuff. Whether you want to call it soft or fluffy, it's the real deal, and it's where the sales process is going. So you need to get this book and get this information and start using it. So the last question, and I ask all the guests this, is you've got one sales vitamin to give the listeners. What's your one sales vitamin today that you want to leave them with?
You don't have to choose between making money and making a difference.
Ah,
You name and claim a purpose bigger than money. When you decide that you're going to be a noble purpose seller, you can do both.
so that is actually not only a sales vitamin, that could be a life vitamin. You kind of gave them 2 vitamins in one. You gave them a multivitamin. So that was.
The mother in me comes out.
Well, Lisa, thanks for coming on today. Some great information from the listeners. I know that they need to get out there and get the book. It's got a ton of value, and appreciate you just spending some time today talking about selling with a noble purpose.
It was such a pleasure. I will make a shameless plug for the book.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know my audience, and I wrote it for the ADD reader. The chapters are like 5 pages each, and you can just
Hey,
read
that's
2.
right. That's right up my level. That's what I like. That's exactly what I like. Well, thank you so much.
Great to be with you.
Yep.